Parts of the UK remain on edge about a month since anti-immigration riots gripped the country. Despite the arrest of hundreds, minority groups still fear that violence could re-erupt. But what were the fault lines that sparked the wave of protests? CNA explores the roots of the riots and why Singapore should pay attention.
The UK city of Liverpool is famous for the Beatles, its football and the unique accent of its people. Thanks to its port city status, it's also known to be welcoming of immigrants. But that sentiment was recently put to the test, all because of a news story that turned out to be false. About 20 kilometers south of Liverpool in the city of Southport, it was reported that 3 girls had been stabbed to death. Rumours that it was a migrant who had committed the act soon spread online, but the alleged killer was, in fact, a local teenage boy. While authorities clarified the information soon after the killings, the damage had been done. The wave of far-right paranoia reached the wider Liverpool, a famously left-leaning city. A Liverpool asylum charity was forced to shut temporarily after it received threats.
The far-right are a tiny minority. They're very vocal, they're very aggressive. You don't really want to deal with them. But the vast majority of people are not. And so what you saw on the Wednesday night here was over 1,000 people who'd come to stand in front of this place and defend it. And we knew some of them, we didn't know others. And to stand in something like that, where somebody has really threatened you, that was just fantastic.
But Liverpool, which voted against Brexit in 2016, is among a handful of outliers in that regard. According to experts, misinformation surrounding the girls' killings was simply the tipping point of simmering unhappiness towards immigrants in large parts of the country. Fueling discontent are housing enclaves, overloaded public services and a lack of jobs, all factors that contributed to the UK voting to leave the EU in the first place.
Maybe people that get their degrees didn't find a great job. The system doesn't help them much. We tend to see that they tend more to join extremist view. But poverty per se is not the case. You need other political factors around.
Like Liverpool, Singapore is an immigrant society, home to people of different ethnicities and religions. After being subject to racial violence in the 1960s, the country's early leaders recognized that multiculturalism needed to form a critical part of the nation's identity. It's why the importance of diversity is nurtured from young, with schools celebrating events like Racial Harmony Day. People who buy public flats must also adhere to what's called the ethnic integration policy, which ensures each neighborhood houses a mix of races.
So these are clear policies which are around, which I think signal to individuals that in this country we do care a lot about multiculturalism and the kind of diversity and living with that kind of diversity.
Singapore complements these policies with punitive measures. For instance, it is a crime to cause ill will among religious groups and to discriminate on the basis of race when hiring and at the workplace. And to prevent mass protests like those seen in the UK, public demonstrators must apply for and receive a police permit. These must be held at a designated space called the Speaker's Corner.
But even those corners, people are very clear that issues to do with race or religion, mobilization based on those ideas are just not acceptable within even that space. So I think we do have a system here in Singapore that people recognize that protests over sensitive issues like differences based on our racial, religious backgrounds or our migrant status are not areas where we want to go out to the streets and campaign for.
Ultimately, experts say it all comes down to how a people derive their national identity, one that is not based on appearance or place of birth, but by common ideals like multiculturalism or meritocracy.